And the trickiest character to cast, and the last character we cast was older Elliott. We were getting down to the wire, like needing to cast somebody. And there was a list of people that somebody put together, and I saw Aubrey's name. And I was like, when that camera pans over on the log and you see Aubrey sitting there, like it just made sense to me and was so much funnier. And also their energies are oddly similar. I just knew they'd have good chemistry.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a teenage girl comes face to face with her older self in director Megan Park's coming-of-age comedy, My Old Ass. The film tells the story of teenager Elliott, who, after her first time taking mushrooms on a summer vacation, is visited by a 39-year-old version of herself. Through this apparition of her older self, she learns valuable lessons about family, friends, love, and coming to terms with her sexual orientation. In addition to My Old Ass, Park's other directorial credit includes the feature film The Fallout. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Park spoke with director Siân Heder about filming My Old Ass. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
I'm so excited to be here talking to you, Megan. I love this movie.
Thank you.
I have to tell you this little story because I live right by Vidiot's, and I was driving by the other day. My 8-year-old was in the back seat, and he goes, "My old ass," because he saw it like up on the marquee. And yeah, no, it was awesome. And he was like, "What's that movie about?" And I was like, "It's a great movie." And I started to tell him about the movie. I'm like, "It's funny," and then he really wanted to hear the whole story in the car. And as I was talking to him, I started like crying. Like as I was describing them, I was like, it's really about childhood and moving on. And, and I think your movie is very sneaky because the tone, you're laughing the whole time. It's a lovely, your dialogue is so effortlessly funny. And then I was sobbing in the movie, and then I was sobbing telling my 8-year-old about it as well. But I want to talk about where it came from, because I think it was the same thing that made me sob, was this idea. And you have kids too, so you'll know this. But
luckily can't read yet.
They can't read yet to be like, what's my old ass? But that feeling of, and I'm hyper aware because my kids are 8 and 10, like that moment. And there's the great line in your script, which I think I read was the thing that like spurned the script for you, about playing pretend and then one day never playing again. So if you can talk about the spark of the idea and why it like stayed with you and made you want to tell a story about it.
Yeah, it wasn't the mushrooms. That was later, oddly, in the process. It was that scene with Chad talking to Elliott about, there's this time when you play pretend with your friends, or your family is all sleeping under the same roof for the last time and you don't know it's the last time. And I was home in Canada, and I grew up not far from where we shot the movie, and I was just feeling really nostalgic and sleeping in my childhood bed and just couldn't stop thinking about that idea, but also that I'm the type of person where if I knew it was the last time, I would just never be able to enjoy it because I'd be so anxious. I'm like, maybe that's all happens for a reason. But yeah, it was really that emotion that made me want to explore the idea. And I feel like I'm still figuring myself out as a writer and a filmmaker. And I'm just very driven by emotion first. And then the characters come to me. And then the story about where I'm going to go and how I'm going to get there comes later. So it was just very emotion driven to start.
And I want to talk to you about tone, because I think tone is always this like ephemeral thing that's really hard to describe when your script is a script and you're, even getting your financing or getting people on board with your vision. But also the very specific tone that you created. And I know we were just talking outside and you were saying like you weren't quite aware of how emotional the movie would end up being. But can you talk about that tone and also your title and how your title played into like you having kind of a compass moving forward for that?
Yeah, I mean, the tone was a bit intentional in the sense because I had just come off of my first movie, The Fallout, which was very heavy. And as you know, you spend like 2 years of your life making something, and so, or longer. And so it was a very heavy headspace to be in. So although it was a very, personal, heartfelt thing for me to explore, I wanted to try to approach it from a bit more of a lighthearted, nostalgic place. And it is a really hard line to walk, and I didn't really know how I was going to get there. But when the mushrooms came to me, I was like, this is a really fun way and a really grounded way. And 18-year-olds, I feel like, really do mushrooms when they go camping, at least in Canada. They're legal there, I think. It was like a fun way into this sort of buy-in and this idea and this way to explore really heavy, superhuman things and topics that can really gut punch you, but surprise you. So it was a bit intentional. And then the title kind of was a joke because I was like, well, surely someone's going to make me change this along the way. And I can't imagine my lawyer being like, and here's your contract for my old ass. Like, it just made me personally laugh. But for some reason, it also very much became a North Star for me because it stopped me from becoming too heavy-handed a lot of the times in both the writing and the making, and still now, not taking anything too seriously to a degree. So, and yeah, no one's made us change it yet. So I guess we're here.
And they should not.
And now your son knows the word ass.
He knew that a lot.
Yeah.
You guys, me explaining this movie to my son was like, and then they do magic mushrooms and the forest. And he's like, what are those? I'm like, well, let me tell you. So no, you did not corrupt my son with ass. But let's talk about the location, because the location is such a character in the movie.
Totally.
And is so epic. And it's like one of those places that when I was watching, I'm like, I was nostalgic for my childhood there, even though I never have been there. Or, it's like it has an immediate nostalgia to it. And it's, and so talk about sort of finding that place and writing for that place.
Well, I mean, it was a miracle that the producers were just chill with us filming there, because usually it's like, you're going to New Mexico and you're going to make it look like Muskoka and you don't really have a choice. And they were just very like, it was a place that I grew up going to every summer. It's like an hour or so away from where I grew up. I went to a summer camp that was on an island there every summer. It really is like the most beautiful place on earth. I can't believe I was so lucky to get to spend so much time there. But the producers were just very open to like, let's go there. Let's check it out and let's see if it's feasible. And it was difficult. I mean, it's not a place that people make movies. It doesn't have the infrastructure for that at all. So that was a tricky part of it that luckily they had to deal with more than me. But it really was a character in the movie, and it's such a special place and such a magical place to grow up. I think it really helped obviously understand, Elliott's nostalgia for it, but also kind of, the fact that she wants to leave this place and move on to somewhere bigger and better. And then you look back and you're like, but that place was the best. Why did I want to leave? That's certainly how I felt, writing the movie. So it was really, really amazing to get to film there. And it was like summer camp for us. We were all renting cabins, and I got to jet ski to work a few times, which was like insane. But yeah, it was, and the DP did such a wonderful job, Kristen Carell, of really capturing. Yeah, she's amazing. This place as another character in the film.
I so relate to this because I think when we made Coda, it was a similar thing. It was like a place that I knew really well.
We referenced your film a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. But I saw so many connections, I guess, both in what I imagine your production must have been like, of kind of boats being out on the water, but also being a family while you're shooting, and what happens when you are like, jet skiing to work together and all living together, and that vibe that creates on set. And I feel it in your movie. Like, I didn't even know that was the case, but I can feel it watching your movie. And I can also feel that you love this place. And there's something so freeing as a filmmaker, because we are asked so much to like go to, Australia to shoot San Francisco or whatever. Like the ability to discover things while you're filming. Like, were there like moments of kind of, as a filmmaker, exploring during scouting, being inspired by a spot, like finding a scene you didn't expect to have just through being in the place?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was such a discovery every step of the way. And even finding Elliott's home was actually proved to be very difficult because so many of the cottages there that are old and beautiful and have that feeling are being like torn down and these mega mansions are being built. So it was really surprisingly difficult to find, places that we could film in. And, shooting on water, as I'm sure you experienced, it's a nightmare. And everyone kept saying like, it takes twice as much time. I'm like, it takes like 10 times as long. And half the time, like our follow boat, the actors would be on a boat and we'd like lose service. We'd be like, well, hope it's going well. Hope they don't need us. So we really had to be loose and flexible, know what we needed to cut the film together, but also just surrender a little bit to, like the leeches in the lake and the bears in the woods, which was like a real thing. It was a part of it. But I think it did really create an atmosphere, especially for the younger actors that, allowed for some playfulness and some fun. And I do think that really helped the energy of the place come alive in the actual movie, that we were really having so much fun. And like when Aubrey got there, we had already been filming for a few weeks, Aubrey Plaza, and we like picked her up on a paddle boat and she was like standing on her dock at her cottage with a bottle of wine. We're like, we're going to come get you. We can see your cottage. She's like, where am I? And we just like, get on the back. And then we paddled to dinner. So it was a little disarming, I think, for everybody to just be in a place that special. And it really felt like summer camp. We all had like matching anklets by the end. That's dumb, but you do that stuff,
I am a big believer in this because I think you can feel strife in a movie, and sometimes obviously strife on a set works for your movie. But I do think you can also feel love in a movie when it's happening, and sort of you have that, your actors have that. And I know you are an actor, started out as an actor. And can you talk about finding this cast? Because I just thought all of the performances across the board were so phenomenal. And also, and what you were looking for specifically with each character that was like kind of, as you were searching to fill each character, what was important to you in these actors?
Well, the most important obviously was Maisy Stella, who plays Elliott, and it's her first movie, which is insane. I was familiar with her because she actually read for my first movie, and I was like, God, she's so good. But we already cast Jenna, and there wasn't like a role that was perfect for her, but she was so, so, so special. And what I loved about her is that she had this joie de vivre and this kind of sparkle in her eye and this positivity, but she was also very cool, which I feel like is rare. And especially it's like, I don't know, a lot of times teenagers don't want to be so sparkly and enthusiastic and bubbly, and that's just very her. And I was actually thinking about her, as I was writing the script, but I didn't really know her. I just obviously like met her in passing. So I don't know if she was actually like that. And then we reached out to her and just said, would you be willing to tape for this? And she hadn't acted in years. She was on a TV show as a kid, Nashville, and she was a musician primarily. And she'd just been sort of being a normal teenager and doing her thing for a while. And as soon as I saw her tape, I was like, oh my God, there it is. Like, that's Elliott. And, we saw so many tapes of so many talented people, but there was a real freshness and rawness to her that was just unmatched. And then the more I got to know her, the more she was so much like Elliott in so many ways, and was really able to translate that sparkle. She didn't lose it. A lot of times it's like, as soon as you yell action, it's just hard. It's really hard. I don't think I could do it very well as an actor. And she was able to do that and more. I mean, just watching her explode while filming this movie, I was just blown away by what she was able to do. And then we really crafted everything around her energy, which was a dream that we were able to do that. We had producers and financiers who didn't make us like, a lot of times like, here's your star. And this is who's playing older Elliott, and figure it out. And we were able to not only cast all the friends and Chad around the energy.
Chad is so perfect.
Incredible. Yeah.
Because the whole time you're just like, what's wrong with Chad? What is wrong with Chad? He's the best.
What did he do? Now, a wonderful young actor from Toronto who I didn't know just sent in his self-tape, and he did a slate, which is, and the camera panned down and he was in like a dress shirt and dress pants, and then he had no shoes on and no socks, which I was like, that's such a Chad move for some reason. And a lot of other dudes sent in audition tapes shirtless, which I thought was a bold choice. I don't know, but he didn't, which I thought was
cool. He wanted you to know what you were getting.
I was like, okay. But yeah, he was so special. And then as soon as we got them together, it was just, amazing. And Maddie Ziegler, who was in my first movie, has been friends with Maisy Stella, who plays Ruthie, since they were like 10 years old. And so there was instant chemistry there. And Carice Brooks, who plays Ro, is her first movie as well, which is insane, and was a dancer that I love dancers. And I was a fan of hers and followed her on Instagram. And we've been casting for that part for ages and ages. And finally I just told the casting, I was like, reach out. I don't even know if she would act, but I feel like she's such a star. And she's in tape, same thing. And it was just like, just yell action and let Carice do Carice and you'll get magic. It's just phenomenal. So it was really fun to just build it all around Maisy's energy. And the trickiest character to cast, and the last character we cast, was older Elliott. And it was really me in my head because I'd originally written that role for a woman in her late 40s, early 50s. And as soon as we cast Maisy, you're like, well, who looks the most like her and the same hair color and same eye color and who, whatever, is that age and is available. And there just wasn't anybody that was really clicking. And then we were getting down to the wire, like needing to cast somebody. And there was a list of people that somebody put together. And I saw Aubrey's name. And I was like, I love her so much. I'm such a fan. I knew Maisy was. And I was like, when that camera pans over on the log and you see Aubrey sitting there, like it just made sense to me and was so much funnier. And also their energies are oddly similar. I just knew they'd have good chemistry. And and I was like, they don't look anything alike, but I was like, I feel like I can write around that and just make some jokes and it's a buy-in. Hopefully people will get over it. And it was like the best decision that the producers encouraged me to make, and just to get out of my own way and be like, who do we want to see on that log? And it all became funnier to me too, because I had been hanging out with Maisy in prep and I've never felt older in my life. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I think literally she was like, what's middle age like? Like that was a line I literally ripped from our conversations. I was like, oh, me? I'm not. Oh, shit.
Like, I'm not there yet.
Wait, I'm only what? And so then it was like funnier that it was, Aubrey's not even 40 and she's like, the movie's called My Old Ass. And the whole thing is like, you're so old. So it just clicked.
It's so I actually think the age is so interesting because there's something that happens like at that age of being like right on the cusp of 40 and like definitely your story is really about actually like what we can hold on or what we can learn from young people. And I love that and it was something that was really important to me with, not to keep relating to Dakota, but it feels very familiar in the sense that there's a lot of emotion and really you're going to college. It's fine. It's just college, but it's not at that age. Like it doesn't feel that way. And there's an incredible amount of pain in like leaving your family, individuating, separating, and I wonder if you can talk about that because I thought you honored your teenage character. Like you honored those emotions in such an important way that this is like a very adult movie about a teenager, which I love because I think a lot of times teenagers are you distance teenagers from adult feeling, but those feelings are incredibly intense at the time.
Yeah, I think it's why we all go back to those coming of age movies because the first time you experience anything is such a big deal and we kind of forget that. And it was a lot of people have asked me, your two movies have been centered around, younger people and how do you write for that voice? And I think I'm not like trying to write a story about a young person. And maybe that helps because I'm just thinking about them as a person first. And I think also that generation can really sniff out when content is like trying to be like made for them. They have really high bullshit radars, which I appreciate and they should. And so, yeah, I just, tried to tap into how I would have felt or, and tried to, have those conversations and tweak things if they didn't feel authentic. But yeah, I think coming of age and all those feelings are just so human and so timeless. And that's why it feels like, at least to me, those movies, I can always go back and rewatch them and they hit me in the same way. So I was just, trying to honor, like you said, that first love and the first time you leave home and all those feelings is as real as they are because they are,
I want to ask you about like big discoveries because I always am interested in this with other filmmakers. Like there's always these revelations when you sort of write the script and then you start filmmaking and you're like, oh, this was not what I thought it would be, or here's this incredible moment that I didn't expect. And then I'll get to post. But I think the first one is always like that transition off the page. I'm wondering if you rehearsed with your actors and what your process was like. And if there was like a certain scene or, do you have a particularly revelatory scene in the movie that was a discovery for you?
As an actor, I never like to over rehearse, but also everybody needs something different. So I try to be respectful of what each person needs. But I think the reason Maisy and I worked well together, and the same reason Jenna Ortega and I worked well together, is we have a similar style and how we like to work. And we didn't really ever rehearse or like say the dialogue out loud. Again, it was like camp. We sat in the boathouse and we just talked through each scene, which was really important for me to make sure that everything felt authentic to her. And, we kind of connected beats to her real life. And if she hadn't experienced something, it was like, how can we kind of talk about that? Or I can share with her an experience I've had. And then, we also talked about like the practicalities of filming things, because again, it was her first movie, and, preparing her for like, this is how we're going to shoot it, but who knows what's going to happen? And this is what could go wrong. And this is how things could change.
Let her drive that boat like a maniac.
Well, the funny thing is when we cast her, she was like, oh, I actually have a boat. I bought a boat on Facebook Marketplace. And I was like, what? And she's like, and I also don't have my boating license. I was like, whoa. And she did have to get her boating license, and she did fail the first time. But yeah, so she was out there driving that boat. She was going for a rip. She was loving it. But yeah, we just tried to talk through everything that could go wrong and prep for as much as possible. But I think, the discovery of it was sort of every day, because there's always fires that you're putting out nonstop. And especially out on the water, it was really just like surrendering a little bit to like the continuity of like everything's moving all the time and it's not going to be the same. And like, again, shout out to Jen Becchiarello, the editor, who really saved my ass so many times, continuity wise and other ways too. But I think, like I said, the movie started to have a lot more heart, I think, when Maisy was attached. And as we were filming it, and I think probably the scene with her and her mom on the deck or the patio, it was so heartfelt and so genuine. And it was written that way to a degree, but Maisy was so emotional, and so many teenagers are written there like, I hate my parents. They're so annoying. But like literally when I was younger, and Maisy, she's like, my worst nightmare is like my mom dying. Like literally that line where she was like, I have to die before mom dies. Like that was, I think, straight from Maisy's mouth. And so there was just something about that scene where it really, I think, changed for me. And there was like a real heart and gravity to that moment that, I don't know, took me a little bit by surprise. It was an emotional scene for me as I wrote it, I remember, but watching it come to life, everybody was quite moved on set, which doesn't really happen. I don't know. That's like weird to say, but it doesn't really happen that often because you're like so jaded and you're just like sunburned and whatever. But it was really, at least for me, it was very emotional that day. So, and also the ending stuff with Chad, it was really moving on set. I mean, it was that hug was quite emotional. And do we ever talk about the cranberries, or was that just us backstage?
It was us backstage, but I'm gonna make you tell that story because it's so good, and it's also such a great story about like finding your movie in post.
Yeah,
and I know you've said your editor was a really key collaborator for you, and so if you can talk about that relationship and like, what the process was of shaping the movie in the edit room.
Well, yeah, talk about discovery. I mean, you're faced with the footage you have, and it's just not always what you expected. And your editor is really like, she deserves so much credit for how much she just opened up my mind to trusting the audience and just really looking at the footage that I had instead of getting stuck in what I thought it was going to be or what I had written. And the movie originally ended with the same thing, like a voiceover monologue between older and younger Elliott. But it was her and her brother corralling the cranberries. And then at the very end, it pans up and they've made it into a giant dick. And it was funny for sure. But it was just like the movie was so much more heartfelt. Like at the end, all of a sudden you're like crying after the hug, and then it just ends on this cranberry dick. And it just like didn't feel like it did the film justice for some reason. And we were like, well, it is funny, but like it just doesn't feel right anymore. And so we ended up, the opening shots of the movie was her driving the boat around the lake. And it ended in this like little scene that got cut too. But we ended up changing it to sort of like say goodbye to the lake and those beautiful shots of her driving around. And it just felt right. It just felt better. So yeah, it's a very much like a kill your darlings thing, as I'm sure you know, and you just kind of have to surrender. But I will say both movies, I feel like I've learned the most about filmmaking in the edit.
I mean, I think it's huge. And I think it's another opportunity to like rewrite and discover and see what you made. And talk about your DP. Like, how did you find your DP and what was that process like? And how did you sort of work together and what were your inspirations visually?
We shot The Fallout together, my first movie. So we already had, a very strong working relationship, although that movie was so different because it was like I think we were the first production back up September 2020. So it was like me in a back room with a face shield. And it was very different experience making that movie. But we had done some music videos together. And that's how we met. And I really liked her. And we just had such a similar working style. And I also feel and felt very insecure about like not knowing cameras and lenses. I was like, who am I to direct a movie? I don't know like that stuff. And then I realized like, well, if you're open to learning and you have an incredible DP who's doesn't have an ego and you don't have an ego, you can work together and you don't need to know everything about cameras and lenses. And K2 as she goes by, which I still have she's never told me why it's K2. It's a mystery. Her name is Kristen. She's very cool. But yeah, we just had a very like symbiotic thing and really speak the same language. And she just knows what I like. And I also really trust her a lot and very open. It's very collaborative. And I remember our producers being like, wow, you guys are such like a duo. And I can't really imagine how it works if you're not in that step, because it's such an important relationship when you're making a movie. But yeah, we just really speak the same language. And we talked a lot about movies like My Girl and Now and Then and Camp Nowhere, and just having it just feel like this timeless sort of nostalgic summer film. So she had so many genius ideas. And I have to say, shout out to her for The Fallout. Even like during COVID, there was only so many people allowed on scouts. It was so tight that a lot of locations I didn't even get to see until we showed up to film. And she went because it was like, who do you want to go? And I was like, she's got to go. Like, she's got to be in there and see the space. And she came up with so many of like the genius ideas for how to shoot that movie. And again, with this movie being out on boats and just going with it and going with like the clouds and the wind and all that, it was like a lot to deal with. And so, yeah, she was really flexible and she kind of runs the set the same way I do, is just trying to be as chill as possible, I guess.
So obviously your next movie is going to take place on a boat completely the whole
Never
time.
Again.
And star Saoirse Ronan, clearly, because
yeah, sure.
You're fully set up for that. No, but I'm curious, like and I think it's interesting that The Fallout, like you've talked about this almost being like an artist reaction to making that movie and sort of going into like the magic and escapism of this movie. Like, what is drawing you now? And do you also find that you're drawn to different things at different points in your life, and what's driving that for you now?
For sure. I mean, I think, I wrote The Fallout before I'd had my daughter, and then I made it once I had her. She was like 2 months old or something when it got greenlit. So I think I just had a different perspective on it, making it, than I even had writing it, which hopefully added to the film. And since, I've made this movie, I've had so many crazy life changes too. So I think as I evolve, my films will change. But I'm also not like, I never want to make a movie about a young person again. Like I really like, working with young actors and doing coming of age stories. And to me, it's not about the genre. It's just about the heart of it. So, the movie I'm working on next is definitely different. It's a big swing. It's very different than The Fallout and this, but, I'm not like set out. It's not like I don't know. It's not in my head. It's, I guess, just following my gut and following my heart. So I'm sure I'll maybe, if people let me, make another coming of age movie, and then maybe make something I probably won't ever make a horror movie because I'm scared of those, but anything else is up for grabs, I guess.
I think I'm with you on that. I'm like, that's the level of nihilism I'm not at yet as a person.
Not yet, but never say never, right?
Yeah, someday. Well, I love this movie. I love you as a filmmaker. I am so happy to have this conversation with you and tell
such an honor. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.